All right, 3 o'clock. We are all good to start. We've got 15 people logged in for you.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to our politically incorrect safety that works, part of our Boat Buyers University seminar series. This is a really, I think, an important presentation that isn't always widely accepted and when I give it. And so please let me know if you are challenged by some of these things, and we can talk it out. You don't need to be too torqued off. But I've had people walk out before, and I wish we could have engaged a little bit about it. But I'm drawing in this. My name is Brian Krantz. I'm the owner of Inside Passage Yacht Sales, and I used to be a towing and salvage captain. And so I had a lot of experience single-handed out in the open ocean off of San Francisco, Monterey Bay, really, really bad seas, doing rescue-like tows and salvages of boats. Lots of scuba diving, lifting and raising vessels, lots of getting boats off of beaches, things like that. That taught me a bunch of tips and ideas that I think are really important, but aren't necessarily what you get in sort of your Coast Guard education course and stuff like that. Those things are all good. There's no question about it. I have this picture here, and if you were in the seminar just before, you saw it already. These are some great clients that I have a long-standing relationship with, and the types of relationships we build with our clients are ones where I want to share this type of situation. I want everyone to be as safe as they possibly can while out on their boats, and it doesn't always come in the manual. I put this disclaimer in there because some people, like I said, some people are a little bit flustered by it. I've known many Coast Guard people and worked very, very close, been commended by the, been given good accolades from the Coast Guard. In fact, the group commander in San Francisco personally gave me a commendation. And it is, they are great people that risk their lives to do all kinds of things. But some of these ideas are things that the Coasties live by, but isn't necessarily in their books. So one of the biggest things that we always are concerned about is what is our basic safety gear. It's remarkable to me the technology that has taken place. The technological advances have created safety unlike anything we've ever had before in the ocean, and I mean in the biggest and greatest way. Let's go into this next slide. So these are things that I consider to be very, very basic safety gear. The modern day chart plotter is something that is absolutely an amazing tool. When I was doing towing and salvage, I would often locate boats with a VHF radio direction finder. So that means while I was talking to the person I was going to rescue, it would point me the direction that their radio signal was coming from, and I would just follow that arrow. And it was not a good way to find someone. I had no idea how far away they were. I had, all kinds of challenges if we were in bad visibility and whatnot. And nowadays, these chart plotters make it like driving your car around the city. I mean, it really shows you all kinds of things and gives you great data that's really easy. I have lots and lots of people that tell me, oh, but you still must carry your paper charts. And I say, don't carry your paper charts. Just get another chart plotter that's ready to go in case this one breaks. Because a chart plotter shows you where you are on the chart. Your iPad's got its own GPS antenna in it. It works totally independently. You can have all your charts loaded in there, and it will show you where you are in the chart. That's the most tricky part of navigating, is knowing where you are on the chart. And without knowing that, which is very difficult to do without a big chart table and all the right equipment and stuff, you're in danger. And this is really good. A couple things about that little chart plotter that we see right there. Do you see how up? I don't know if you can see my pointer right there. Do you see how that's a latitude and longitude? Now that we have chart plotters, people have gotten a little bit casual and not paid attention to latitude and longitude numbers. I always encourage my clients to make sure that screen shows their latitude and longitude of the location of the boat, not where they're trying to go, but of the location of the boat. Because if that's the case and you are calling for help, you can read those numbers. Even the children on my boat know how to read those numbers into a radio. And those are the important things, because those will pinpoint exactly where you are to the people trying to rescue you. And it's even more important that you read those numbers, not just the first part of the numbers, but after the decimal point. Those little numbers at the end, which usually are not very important, those are the most important. Those are the ones that will get you right to where you need to go. And feel free to ask me more about chart plotters. I've got all kinds of opinions about the different brands and different things, but a really good chart plotter, a bigger screen than you want to pay for, get the bigger screen anyways, because it really is a huge safety issue. There's different ways of setting them up that are better than others too, but knowing where you are on that chart, you avoid rocks, you avoid shallow areas, you avoid sunken ships, on and on and on and on, which are the peril that everyone encounters. A dinghy. Lots of folks are like, I'm not going to need a dinghy. I'm just going from dock to dock. It's important to understand that a dinghy is also a lifeboat, and it is really important to have. You especially want to make sure you have a dinghy that you can deploy quickly and easily. I prefer dinghies that aren't launched with cables. I like ropes because if I need to cut that dinghy loose to get it loose quick, I want to be able to cut it. But you want a dinghy that can launch quickly and easily and safely. Flares are nighttime visuals. We have the neatest technologies brought us these incredible LED flares that are and work incredibly well, float very well, last much longer than one of these sparky flares. Lots of neat technology in flares. Those are really important to have, those kinds of flares. The LED lights don't expire nearly as quickly as the regular flares too. Cell phone boosters. They make, Wilson in particular is a great company that makes wonderful cell phone boosters. These mount permanently in your boat. It's not something you tag along with you. Mounts permanently in your boat, and it causes your cell phone to work amazingly better while out on the water, because it grabs the signal that you might get up high on an antenna and then boosts it down into the cabin of the boat. More and more people, and especially if the captain of the boat, who knows how to handle all the controls and all those things, has a heart attack or has a problem or something like that, people are going to start whipping out their phone and dial 911. Well, that phone is better if it works. And with a good cell phone booster, you can have cell phone coverage up most of Vancouver Island, up and back, up into Prudhoe Haven, and unless you're way deep in one of the fjords, you can get some cell phone communication, which is really nice. A deck mounted radio. I've often tried to kind of be cheap and just get away with a small handheld radio. They have new handheld radios. I've got an example one right here that are really impressive. They've got the DSC button on them, and we'll talk about DSC in a second, so they can find you. They're really great handheld radios, and they're nice things to have. But honestly, a deck mounted radio is never missing. It's never low on battery. It's always there and ready to go. You can see something that's really important. Do you see how the latitude and longitude is shown on the screen of this deck mount radio? That's an important feature, to show that it will show you that latitude and longitude, and also that it has this distress button. I don't know if everyone understands what that distress button does. When you push that button, it piggybacks off VH radios in the area and sends your exact coordinates to the Coast Guard. It's an incredible device, but it's immensely safe, and it's so easy because as long as your chart plotter is operational, as long as your radio has been connected to the chart plotter properly, any child, which means you need to be careful not to let them touch the button because they like red buttons, any child can go up and touch that button and instantly send that there's a boat in danger at this exact coordinate. Now, if you do a a radio slot like this, you also have the opportunity of registering it with the federal government. And when you register it, not only will it send a message that there's a boat in danger at this particular location, it will tell them the size of your boat, your name, your phone number, all these different things. It hands off a whole other amount of information. So those MMSI numbers are really important. I see we got a question there. The radio, you should have at least one, and it should be mounted at the helm so that you can operate the boat and operate the radio simultaneously. If your boat is loud inside, boats are getting much quieter lately. It's really nice, no matter what deck mount radio you buy, none of the speakers are very good. It's very inexpensive to put a remote speaker in and have it near your ear. So let's say your deck mount radio is down low by your hip. You put the remote speaker on the ceiling right above your head. It has a little volume thing. And now communications is much, much better. Holding the mic, speaking, listening through that thing. But you need to have at least one at the helm. It doesn't hurt to have one at the passenger side. Let's say you're in an emergency situation and your co-pilot is handling communications. They do better at that. You can focus on driving. They can do communications. Let them handle that radio. Radios often have the opportunity to not only have a station mount, but also a command mic, so that it's a whole nother remote that operates off the same radio system. And I think you can sometimes put 2 different command mics on there. AIS, if you're not familiar with it, is a system that we're showing you a picture of a chart plotter here. Again, it doesn't show the AIS coordinates, but what it does is all the commercial boats now are mandated to register with AIS in a vessel traffic. And AIS allows you, not only when boats show up on your chart plotter, even if you're not using radar, they still show up on your chart plotter through satellite communications. And it tells you the name of the boat, shows you the direction it's going, and tells you, if you click on it, it tells you how to contact that boat. You can have AIS that sends and receives both. So for some reason you don't want them to know who you are, you can just receive and find out what all the other boats are. All commercial ships are mandated to have it, but many, many, many recreational people have both send and receive AIS. So if you want a ferry to know you're in front of it, even though it can't see you, having a send AIS system is by far the best way to be noticed. A little boat becomes big with AIS. It's a great system, and I said it works through GPS. I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. It's VHF antenna transmissions. So it's a little bit line of sight. You can only sort of see the boats that you can see right there. You can go on to different apps where, if you have internet connections, your phone can have AIS. You can watch your boat's traffic on AIS. The marine traffic's the website, and they have apps that are very inexpensive. I often refer to AIS apps that are on iPads or on phones as a poor man's radar. It won't show you every boat, but every commercial boat, the important big ones, will show up on AIS. It's a new level of technology that you won't, in a Coast Guard manual, they won't tell you have an AIS, have a deck mount. They'll say have VHF, but not a deck mounted radio. Cell phone boosters are not included in that. The chart plotters, they tell you, you should have spare charts, not a chart plotter. It's an important thing.
Brian, we have a couple questions. We've got one person.
Please.
I'm going to allow Jim Nixon to talk. If you want to go off of mute, Jim.
How are you doing, Jim?
Jim Nixon, you are on mute. I see your hand is raised. I have allowed you to speak. If you want to go off of mute, we can answer your question. We also have one Q&A from Heidi, example of how to read chart numbers correctly for the Coast Guard.
This is Jim Nixon. I'm sorry, I took a little while to figure out how to get off on mute. I want to ask you,
no problem, Jim.
Any recommendations for cell phone boosters?
Wilson. It's an interesting thing. We sell some very, very fine and expensive yachts, and the people really want the very best. And so I've done some research on them. Now it's probably a year old, so there might be someone else that's come into the game. But when I called Wilson's tech support or customer support, I get an engineer, and they absolutely help you very specifically build the best system for your boat. And they're excellent. I like the Wilson things. They do cars, they do boats. They have a directional antennas, and all the above.
Do they sell through Boat US as well, or not?
I'm not sure if they sell through Boat US, but I know they're on Amazon. They're on, you can get it directly from their website. They are a huge company, and they have many different outlets that you're able to get them through.
Great, thank you very much. I wanted to also make a comment when you were talking about chart plotters. Is that what I've gotten into is I keep a set of paper charts right near my chart plotter, and
Yes.
bought some little sticky arrows from one of the office supply companies, and every 15 minutes or so I put that on my chart so I know exactly where I was.
So you know the problem, and that is great. You found a solution to make a paper chart valuable by updating on a regular basis your location. Now, some of our folks these days are traveling around in 30 to 35 knot boats in the inside passage. I mean, they are moving. And so that would be more difficult to do. And they definitely could find themselves in trouble inside that 15-minute time period. But that's a great selection to make if you've got the space to lay out a paper chart to really to make that paper chart relevant. Because it does give you a nice big picture. You know what I mean? I mean, it shows you where you are in the world, whereas a lot of times you'll zoom in pretty tight on a chart plotter.
Yes, thank you very much.
So thank you. I appreciate the question.
Okay, we have one from Heidi in the Q&A. Can you please give an example of how to read chart numbers correctly for the Coast Guard?
Yes, I wish I had it a little more blown up. Hang on a second here. Going there. There we go. Back on this slide, can you see? I don't know if everyone can see that well. I don't know if I can blow that up. No. So I'm looking really closely. I'm having to stare out with my bifocal glasses here, and I see north 26.74300, west 080 decimal, and then there's a bunch of numbers after that. That's exactly how I read it to them. You read the letter N, the numbers, and it's absolutely essential that you call out the decimal points, and sometimes they have a little degree mark, and decimal, north, number, decimal. It's really important when speaking on the radio that you speak loudly and with a cadence. Slow is good, but a real cadence of slow, because if the communications drops out, they want to have an idea of how much they missed and where to go back to. And so it's really important to be loud, clear, and with cadence. I hope that helped. Let's see, I'm going to here's some other ones. Low COB. This is something when you're out shopping for a boat. It's the first thing. If you want a safe boat, get a boat that's low and wide. Big bottom boats are good. And it's funny to me, I've got stories. I've been traveling, delivering boats in just here. We have an interesting water here in the inside. And we were crossing the Fraser River area, and I was in a small fast boat that had stability because it was fast and was giving the lift underneath it, and looking at quite a large ocean-going passage-making trawler, who I'm assuming did not have stabilization enacted at the time. And that boat hit some turbulent waters at the river mouth of the Fraser River. And I watched as it just pitched over and held there for some amount of time, and then took the water and swung back. It must have done it 3 or 4 times. And I assure you, if my wife had been on board, she'd never be on board again. It looked absolutely terrible. They were up really high and just pitching back and forth. A lower center of buoyancy is a positive thing. I understand you might not get your fly bridge, or you don't have an enclosed fly bridge, but as much as you can, try to keep your boats low. As a towing captain, a knife at the helm is an absolute crucial thing. And the idea is that often not only do you want to tie up to something, but often you need to cut loose of something and you don't have time, or it's tied off on the other boat, or there's some other reason, and you need to be able to cut it off. If you only carry a knife with you, you'll often forget it, wear a different pair of pants, something's not there. A knife at the helm. For my business in towing, if a tow got out of sorts and the tow line was going the wrong direction on the boat, it could capsize your boat quite quickly and you might not have time to undo it. Using that knife to cut a line is really important. Getting great weather info. Sorry, I went ahead there. I didn't mean to click that. Is a big deal. We did a trip. I did a delivery with some clients up to Alaska, and I had the opportunity to work with someone where we had our own personal weather person. I think he was $50 a day. He was a weather expert. His name was Bob, and we got to call him through our satellite phone or through the cell phone booster every day to get a personalized weather report. It was fabulous. Understanding weather is a really important thing, and you can get it through your GPS on your chart plotter nowadays too by getting set up with Sirius satellite weather that it feeds into your chart plotter that gives you the buoy information around. We'll talk a little bit about weather here in a minute too. A fuel gauge, it's very important to have. Boats have terrible fuel gauges. I don't know for sure why, because planes have good fuel gauges. They have a multitude of sensors. You know how much fuel is in your plane, even though it's tipping and all around. Boats are not that way. Every boat's got a different fuel gauge. If you've never run out of gas in your boat, you don't know how much gas it takes. You don't understand your gauge yet. It's very, very tricky. I've been on many boats that last quarter of the tank is like 5 minutes. I mean, it just hits the last quarter tank and you don't have a chance to get anywhere. As soon as you are at half a tank, you need to be looking for fuel. Get to know your fuel gauge and understand exactly how much fuel you're using and have. And there's all kinds of resources to help you with that too. If you don't have the ability to get a sighting on your fuel tank, that is a great opportunity. If you can get something that is a mechanical, shows you how much fluid is inside the tank, it's really helpful. Of my services, when I did towing and salvage, it sounds kind of glorious, diving down, bringing up the boats, towing them off the beach, all these different big salvage type things. 99% of the time I brought gas or electricity to the boats. Of the things that disable a boat, it's gas and electricity. And it's an interesting thing. So a jumper box, when these jumper box first came out, they're much more fancy than even the ones shown here now. They have these tiny lithium ion ones that are very, very powerful. Don't get a weak one though. There's some that are meant just for a small car. You might want a heavier duty one. But these things were incredible. When I was towing and salvage in the beginning, I'd come up to jump someone out in the ocean and I'd have to get big buoys out, tie our boats together and handle them a cable that was plugged in on my boat to plug into their boat to start their boat. It was incredibly dangerous. Later on, when these came out, I just pull up to them, I bounce off of them, hand them the jumper box, and they'd hand it back to me before they headed in. Having a spare jumper box on your boat is a great thing. And the ones that they're selling now, these little power centers, that are just batteries, lithium ion batteries, and charge your phone, they'll, run your laptop. They do all kinds of great accessory type things that are excellent, and you can keep them up to by charging them right on your boat too. Speed is something that most people consider to be dangerous, and I want to submit to you, if your boat can go fast, you don't have to go fast. But if you are in Desolation Sound and it's beautiful and calm and it's just lovely and glorious and it's flat as a board, and you go to bed that night and you hear that at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, a gale is coming down from the north and is going to sweep through all of the inside passage area there between Vancouver Island over the next 4 days, and you have to be back to work in 2. Guess what? If you have a fast boat, you pull the anchor at sunrise and you are gone on flat water all the way back to Seattle before the gale ever hits. Whereas if you're in a slow boat, you're quite the opposite. You're putting out a second anchor and you're going to have to weather that storm. Or you do what's even worse is you go out and you drive in dangerous conditions. I want to submit to you that speed gives you a potential for safety in many, many occasions. If someone gets injured, we've had a lot of situations, someone's got a bad cut. Well, if they were in a very, very slow boat, that it's too long, and they've got to bring a helicopter in to help the person. They got to do that. Or what they do is, because they don't want to bring the helicopter, they let it go. They don't tend to it properly. Whereas if you have a fast boat and the weather's good, boom, you're at help really quickly. These are some things that we often talk about, that we make a big deal about, that I think aren't as, I don't know how to say this, they don't end up helping as much as you think. And the first one is spare parts. When I was doing towing and salvage, some of my clients were folks that were very, very religious about having a spare everything on their boat. They had a spare everything. They had a spare chart plotter. They had a spare, oil filters. They had spare fuel filters. They had spares, absolutely everything. There's an incredible inventory of spare things. And I would often show up to tow them, even though they were disabled at 6 in the morning. I would be to them at 12 midnight in the dark, towing them in the dark in very, very dangerous situations. The reason is because they spent all day trying to fix their boat. They spent all day, and it didn't work, and they were seasick because they were down in the bilge, and they didn't have quite the right tool, and they ended up breaking this or hurting this, and not actually getting things fixed. Everyone was upset. Everyone was stressed out. Instead of counting on your spare parts, go ahead. If you want your spare parts, have a whole bunch of them. But the first thing you do if you're disabled is you call for help. If you get your boat fixed before they come, great. That's great. But get them underway so you're not taking what is a minor situation and turning it into a major situation by attempting to do repair in an awkward situation out in the open sea. Spare parts can be great things, but they can also be quite a distraction from taking care of the problem that's at hand. Everyone loves life jackets. I love life jackets. My kids, I force them to wear life jackets. Our family did a trip. We sell the boats. The Sargo boats come from Finland, and so we went and took delivery. I have three children, 18, 17, and 13, or 12, not quite 13 yet. And we went to Finland, and we picked up a boat, and we rowed the boat across the sea, the Baltic Sea, down the coast of Sweden, across the canal, all the way across the country of Sweden, and then across to Denmark, down the coast, and across the canal in Germany, out into the North Sea, around the Frisian Islands, to where we dropped the boat off near Hamburg. And it was an incredible time, 3.5 weeks of traveling. And we went through 100 locks, and 100 locks. And so we had to lock frequently in the canal across Sweden. And of course, we always wore our life jackets in those situations. It was a very, very big deal. Having the ability to float is important. There's a lot of things that people they take for granted from the life jacket. What I hate to see is when it's really rough weather and you have boat driving partners, one person drives, the other person goes for the fender up front. Like that fender up front is the most dangerous thing on your boat, because you got to walk up the side of it if it's not a good walkway. And what happens is, if anyone ever says, oh, it's kind of rough out, so before you go get the fender up on the front of the boat, you should put your life jacket on, that's a sign. Don't do it. I tell my kids all the time, put both feet on the deck, stay in the boat. Don't do anything that would cause you not to be in the boat. So when it's that rough, forget the fender up on the bow. If you even think about it, put your life jacket on, of course. But if you're thinking, I'm going to put my life jacket on because it's dangerous, that means don't do it. Because when someone goes in the water, it is not easy to get them out. Often you hurt the person in the water by trying to rescue the person in the water. Often you lose the person in the water. Often you get to them, you get your hand on them, and you can't get them out. It's not unlikely that you get drug in the process. Everything gets way worse when you're in the water, and the life jacket is a small amount of help. Our water is colder here, and in 7 minutes, most people lose 75% of their grip strength. They cannot hang on to the person who's trying to rescue them, and that person is rarely strong enough to bring them in. I tell my kids, keep your feet on the deck. Don't rely on your life jacket. Horns, a really good, really loud horn is such a great feature for on a boat. It's something really good to hear. Whether you like, maybe you have some of your crew is out on the hiking around and you need to notify them it's an emergency, it's time to get back. Boy, that horn is a great thing. VHF works well too, but the horns are great. But it's not something that's going to save someone's life. It's not a super, super important thing. Flashlights. I know we all have flashlights over boats nowadays, but we got flashlights on our phones. We got flashlights on our iPads. There's so many flashlights on the boat that it's not nearly as important of a thing as they have been historically. Proper planning. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a Q&A
Yes.
from David writes, I use a fuel flow meter designed for a plane on my boat. Lets me know exactly how much fuel I've used.
Well, you have a good fuel flow meters on boats are pretty much all of the new boats have them these days. But the older ones weren't very good, and I bet the ones that were from a plane are exceptional. That's a great thing to have. And knowing how much fuel you're using is everything to avoiding that very dangerous thing of running out of fuel. That's a great item to have. Proper planning and mental attitude. Understanding what your overall plan is a really important thing in taking your boat out. Let's see, this one should have a few other little things. Got to move my chat over here.
We have one more question that just came in.
Oh, go ahead.
From Kill Liso, how to tie a towing bridle in an emergency for an emergency?
You know, I like to have, if it's an emergency, I don't think a bridle is overly important. You just need to get hooked up to that boat and get them off the rock. You need to, I mean, I would go to a boat in an emergency situation. They're going on the beach, the surf is starting to grab them. I don't need to tow them a long ways, right? I just need to get them out of danger. And I would send them the loop, and I'd have them loop a cleat, and then I'd start pulling on them, even if it was from the stern sometimes, maybe not in surf from the stern, but in other situations, just to get control of the situation. Once you have control of the situation, then it's nice. It depends on the boat though. If the boat's just got a good big cleat right at the anchor, or there's a bow eye on a smaller boat, those are some of my favorite places to hang on to and not worry about having the extra lines that might twist and tangle and whatnot. But I did have a opportunity once to tow a commercial fisherman whose boat was so decrepit and falling apart that I couldn't tie to a cleat, because the cleats would just fall off as soon as I tried to get underway. I actually had to encircle the boat with a line so I could grab it all together as one piece. But bridles are nice and one on either side of the bow that comes together in a V, or even it works really, really well. But first and foremost, just get that boat off there. And maybe even a more important part to that is that a bridle, a lot of times people feel like a bridle will keep a boat going more straight. And there's a lot of other things that make a difference on that. And one of the most is how far behind you the other boat is. So more importantly than having a bridle is to make sure you have a long enough line that you can adjust the distance. And what you'll see, if you look behind your boat when you're traveling next time, you'll see there's sort of some hills that you create. And what you want to make sure is that your boat is going up on a swell at the same time the other boat is. You guys are in sync, and you might need to shorten or lengthen the line to do that. If if you're not in sync and the boat behind you is going down a small wave, just a wake even makes a difference. When you're going up, you'll find that boat starts to bow steer and go all over the place. So you want to be able to create a situation where you can adjust the length of the line, because if you're traveling from, say, Desolation Sound back to Vancouver, that distance between the waves or between the hills will vary every probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your trip, because you're going through different water, different currents, different tides, and it's really nice to be able to adjust those. I hope that helped. Planning for medical emergencies. I like to always have an idea in my mind when I'm traveling which way I go if there's an emergency in advance. I want to know, hey, I'm 10 miles north of Vancouver and 25 miles south of Campbell River, and when that changes, when do I change my destination to another place? You don't want to head out and end up going the wrong direction. So have an idea and a plan for medical emergencies. Which Coast Guard station am I calling when that comes up? Panic. Of the things that happen on the water, and I've been in all kinds of situations where everyone was panicked, myself included, and it's surprising. We can be extremely smart, and when we panic, we are just not smart. All of a sudden, it all changes. We don't make right decisions. We don't make good decisions. We don't plan well. And so the key is to stay out of panic. And what my wife and I have found is that when I panic, she gets calm. And when she panics, I get calm. So we have talked about this, and we have communication between each other about, hey, you're panicking, I'm taking over. You're panicking, I'm taking over. So we acquiesce to leadership on the other person's role in times when we are more stressed. And it's worked really well for us. When I did towing and salvage, it was almost always the other people panicking, and I got a chance to watch it. But really have an understanding of your crew and who panics and who doesn't. One of my kids was someone that would get more frightened and stuff, and I'd say, into the berth, stay out of the way, don't participate in the process. You gotta make sure people are not panicking. It's a big deal. And also understand that people will panic, and if you're panicking and you can't hand over the reins to somebody else, diminish your responsibilities. Just don't do as much. Calming down is essential. I've talked a little bit about my wife and I. Who is the captain? Boats are not group things, and it might change in different situations, but everyone should have a conversation about who is making the decisions, and that makes all the difference. And if you can get that understood before you get out and underway, I think you're going to have a great experience. A real weather info. I talked about having Bob, the weather guy, where we could call and just get the weather every day. Oh my goodness, that was a huge thing. Just a little story about that. So we were traveling from Elfin Cove and up to Yakutat. So we're out in the Gulf of Alaska, and we stopped off at Yakutat. We did that late in the afternoon. We had a rather fast boat. We were on a coastal craft, running even in open ocean, 20 knots. And so we're running up to Yakutat in the evening. And we passed by a commercial boat, probably a 70-foot commercial boat called the St. George. And it was interesting because they saw us on AIS. We had AIS on our boat. They called us up on the radio because it gives your radio frequency and the name of your boat. And they called us up and they said, holy smokes, how are you going that fast? Like, they just couldn't believe it because they were a very slow commercial boat. And we had a nice chat with them a little bit, and we went into Yakutat, and they'd said they were coming into Yakutat too. So we got to Yakutat, we had dinner in a restaurant, fell asleep on the boat, got up before sunrise the next morning, which is really early in Alaska in the summer, and started out of the harbor at Yakutat to cross the Gulf of Alaska into the Hinchinbrook entrance and go to the harbor that's right up there, right inside the entrance. Oh, it's escaping me right now, sorry. So we started that trip, a major journey, right? That we knew at the speeds we could go and stuff, we'd make it in that day. We planned our fuel and everything really carefully. Just as we were coming out of Yakutat, we saw the St. George coming in for fuel. And we knew they were going to fuel up and turn around and head across the Gulf of Alaska. Now, we had called that morning and asked about the weather. And the weather guy Bob, through our satellite radio or telephone, told us, you need to get going first thing in the morning, because by 5 p.m, a whole storm front's coming in. So you need to get across the Gulf today, because it's going to get nasty. And so we hustled up and got going. Well, son of a gun, we came in, we're back at the house in Anchorage. We made it across the Gulf of Alaska. It was a huge relief. We just fabulous experience. Really impressive being out in the wilderness that way. Some rough seas, but not too bad. And I opened up the newspaper, sitting in the house in Anchorage. On the cover of the newspaper was St. George goes aground in the Gulf of Alaska. 20-foot seas, gale force winds on the thing. Shows the boat and all its contents strewn all across the beach. And the Coast Guard had brought all the crew off by helicopter. That same boat we saw, less than 24 hours difference, but we had been paying very close attention to the weather, and either he hadn't or he thought he would just push through it. It's a story I tell, that getting good weather info is such a great thing. Keep feet on the deck. I talked to you a little bit about that in the life jackets. That's one of my family rules. If I see a kid sitting on the gunnel with 1 foot in the air, they get a little bit of a swat. No, don't tell the police. I make sure they understand it's important. Fill the tank, even in Canada. I love it when I'm with someone and they're like, well, we're going to be in the United States pretty soon and the gas is better price, so I think I'm going to wait. Like, no, as soon as you say that, go fill it up, give some money to the Canadians. So it's okay. You want to make sure you're running on a full tank as often as you possibly can. If you happen to be you're going in for snacks or something, top that tank off, make sure you've got the fuel.
Brian, we have one question on Q&A.
Yes.
From Alita. Would you recommend a phone or iPad app that everyone should consider?
Yes, there's a couple of them. Marine Traffic is both on phone and iPad. I think those are excellent. Actually, I'm looking to my phone right here so I can get you the exact names, because they're ones that I use. I feel strongly about these. These are good ones that I've used a lot. So Marine Traffic, I think, is a very, very good one. And under weather, I really do like Sail Flow and Windy. One, Sail Flow, FLOW, and Windy. I think those are both really good ones. And there is a link that I can post. I'll post in the chat here once we're wrapped up to a particular weather spot that they call Click Point Weather. And it's a NOAA weather forecast, but they actually, you can click on the location you're going to be and it gives you the forecast for just that location. It's quite a nice one. It's primarily a forecast, whereas Sail Flow will give you actual, like, hourly data. I hope that helps. Yeah, I'll be able to do that. So not to get people frightened or anything, but I have a couple different things to, hang on a second, I'm going to copy that app. Things to keep an eye out when we're out here that are unique to our area for boating that can be dangerous. Tidal rapids. It's an interesting thing, but as you travel more up north, you'll see that you'll get into these areas that have rapids that go one way on one tide and the other way on the other tide. And in certain situations, these rapids can be 4 feet tall, big waves, and they're treacherous. An interesting thing is they are more dangerous for a slow boat than a fast boat. Obviously, if a fast boat is jumping off of them or something, that's bad. But the more boat that you have in the water, the more difficult the water will direct the boat, the more challenging it might be. It's important to keep your eyes up for tidal rapids. I was traveling with my family through the Yacht rapids, and I didn't mention to them that we were in a tidal rapid area, and I saw a little ribbon of whitewater wave, just a tiny little ribbon across, maybe 200 yards long across this channel. And I thought, oh, this is nothing. And as I got closer, I could see that the wave was probably 10 inches tall, just this tiny little overflow rapid. It was quite, one tide was coming under and the other tide was going up. So I made sure I was perfectly perpendicular. I kept my speed fast. I was probably in a 30-knot boat, kept my speed quite fast, and I just drove perpendicularly right over it. And hardly a bump. It wasn't very high. But while that was underneath our boat, I could instantly tell and feel how it was controlling the boat. And our momentum carried us across that rapid. But I could see if I'd been going slow, it would have turned my boat sideways and rolled me like a hot dog in one of those movie theater hot dog machines. It was terrifying to me. And I will never go over one of those little rapids again. It was really quite a scary experience for me. Let's see.
We have two questions in Q&A.
Yes.
One
yes,
from
please.
Catherine Shaw. Is there a radio channel for getting accurate, good weather info?
I think the link that I'm going to try to post for you here a little later is probably better. Although you'll have to have a cell phone connection to get to it, is probably of the best. But the weather radio stations, I find they have good, accurate information, but they are laborious to listen to because they're just cycling through these things. I have not found those to be my best resource. I'd way rather get buoy data off of Sirius satellite weather, or be able to get my weather information from my cell phone, because you can go right to your area quite easily, which is the radio. They have all kinds of funny names that aren't the names that most people recognize. So, the weather in Timbuktu and this place and that place, and what always happens to me is I'm listening and I'm waiting to hear this one particular one, and I get distracted and start doing something else, and it goes right by and I miss it. So I have to listen and wait again. So I have not had great success with that. Overfalls like tidal rapids, whirlpools. Up north, there's a substantial amount of whirlpools. It's very enticing. You want to get up close and look down. Don't, stay away from the whirlpool. You want to move your boat away from some option like that. Even if it looks like it's small, it's still not a safe thing. The straits are quite impressive here. We have a very, very rough water, maybe not the big swell that you would see, but there's really important to watch your weather and traffic navigating the straits. Just big waves if you're offshore. I encourage people when they're getting into boating, if they have an opportunity to get into some rough weather and not have an expedition to do, they're not underway on a trip, get out there and drive the boat around in the rough weather and learn how the waves what they do to your boat and how it handles in those certain situations, so that you have some understanding of how your vessel handles in inclement conditions. It's not like a surprise the first time when it's an emergency. Narrows are tricky, not only because they're quite narrow and sometimes shallow, but the current running back and forth from them can often be very challenging. If you have a fast boat, you need to be careful, because slow boats often can't pass through a narrow because of the current speed. You can get through because you get up on top of the water and overpower the current underneath you. But when you're doing that, it's probably the time for all the slower boats to be coming that direction. You don't want to be in a narrow spot with boats coming your way. So there is radio protocol for calling out that you're going to be transiting on narrows. And I want to encourage especially fast boats that are going against the current to make sure they're clear, that the boats aren't coming to the other side. That's a little bit of some of the work I did. Obviously, this is a matter of not having a chart plotter, not paying attention. And that boat probably didn't go aground when that rock was that high. It was probably a higher tide. He didn't see it.
Brian,
and now go ahead.
We've got a couple questions coming through. So
Sure.
Jim Nixon asked, why is the Puget Sound classified as international waters and not inland?
I don't know. I didn't know that that was the case even. I'm not sure about that. That's an interesting question. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that.
Mike McWayne asked, do you have cell phone coverage in the north? You have stories about emergencies and use cell phones as the mode, but the stories are Desolation Sound, Gulf of Alaska, etc. Do you use radio?
Absolutely, always have VHF radio as a backup for an emergency situation. Cell phone is a much easier form of communication when it works, but when you're in a fjord, it's gone. Surprisingly, in Desolation Sound, they have them on the tops of some of the mountains up there, and so the cell phone coverage has gotten better and better up in the Desolation Sound area. But when we traveled farther north into Alaska, the cell phone coverage just zilch. There's nothing to boost. There's nothing that works up there, and even though it's worthy of note that VHF is there's high sites and things for VHF, but it stops too. Satellite communications in some of those spots is your only option, and the satellite phones have gotten to be remarkably less expensive than they used to be.
Okay, our last question is, what is overfalls?
So an overfall, I jumped ahead a little bit on my thing in tidal rapids. I told the story about an overfall. So it's a tidal-based thing, and those tidal rapids often create overfalls. Those things kind of run together. Is that it for questions?
Yes, that's it for questions.
Anchoring is a huge safety thing. Understand your anchor. And the one tip that I like to give people that is not politically correct is people love to have all chain anchoring. And one of the safety things, obviously, the more weight you have, the longer it is, the better anchoring job it will do. There's no question. But often in a safety situation, you might need to retrieve your anchor and get it up to get disconnected. And sometimes when people go all chain, you can't cut it. I remember I was talking about sometimes you got to let it go. You can't cut it. And it's very difficult to unhook the chain from the boat, inside the boat. So I really prefer a piece of chain and then more rope, a rode to make the line longer. It's not least of all because if your windlass breaks, you can retrieve your whole anchoring system. So it's a little bit politically incorrect. Everyone likes to say, I want all chain, that's the only way to go. But then when your windlass is done, you're cutting loose of a lot of stuff, and it's not easy to cut it loose. And sometimes you need it to be cut loose quick. Docking is always a challenge. Some of these are just sort of fun pictures. I don't know if anyone saw this one. This boat was a problem with center of buoyancy. And I think there was huge problems with the insurance on this one, but accidents will happen. This boat had been launched for a total of 15 minutes and rolled over right at the launch spot, right there in Anacortes. This is right near where my office is. It's when things happen, boat insurance is incredibly inexpensive. It's just astounding. I don't know how they do it. I guess just a lot of people don't use their boat or something, but they give great coverage for great prices. Feel free to chat questions or raise questions. I'm just going to go through some of the relationships we made and clients we've made. They've sent me pictures of their experiences. And so I have a few pictures of, I kind of felt bad. We just talked about all the dangerous and bad things about boats. I just wanted to show some of the lovely pictures of what boating can be like. But feel free to ask questions while I kind of go through these. These are great clients and friends that have become friends over the years. Most of the photos are by Jeff Hansen, who is not a professional photographer, but just incredibly gifted.
got a few questions on the chat, Brian.
Sure.
Mike asks, what satellite radio thoughts, company title, or sorry, company type and plan?
For, well, I think, I don't know, when you mean satellite radio, like a satellite phone, I couldn't tell. I don't think there's too many players in that world, but I think that the big key when it's satellite type communications is some work better in Alaska or not. You just need to ask that company that you're considering how they do in Alaska. There are less satellites available in Alaska, and some of the companies go connect better with certain satellites. So some are better for Alaska.
Awesome. So Mike McGuane, I am going to allow you to talk. If you can go off of mute, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, Mike.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. I was trying to hit a question, but you answered my question. Yes, satellite phone. Thank you very much.
Oh, excellent. Good. Glad we got
you. Mute me again, please.
Okay, Patrick Haley. So where is the politically incorrect? Where all of these items seem to be common sense. What can you go a little bit more in depth on the politically incorrectness, Brian?
Well, I must admit I have toned down my seminar a little bit after I've had people stomp off, and I've actually had complaints for some of these things. My whole thing about life jackets and PFDs, telling some of those stories, and some people took it as being that I was not a proponent for life jackets and PFDs. It's not that I'm not a proponent for them. I don't trust them to do much. And so I got in a lot of heat about not talking about those. The chart plotting, maybe it's a sign of the times. I've been doing this seminar for a number of years, but boy, when I talked to some of the people and said, hey, more important than a spare set of charts is having another device that has charting capabilities, folks got really feisty about it. So I appreciate that very much, you saying that, and I might need to trim the name of it a little bit and be able to take that. Maybe it's not as politically incorrect as it used to be.
All right, we have another question from Catherine. If you see a tidal rapid, are you best to go around it?
No, that's a beautiful, that's a great question. I really appreciate that. It will stop. You should just wait. The tidal rapids are tide based. So when the tide is calm, in fact, you can find in chart books at what time of the tide different tidal rapids are going to be more active. So if you come up to a tidal rapid like the one that I saw, but sometimes they're much bigger, all you have to do is wait for the tide to start to turn, and then it goes completely calm. They go right away.
Response to your the previous question from Patrick about political correctness. He says, bring it on. If it saves a life, say it.
That's great. That's great. Yes. Let's see, I use a freestanding GPS called Sky Pro GPS, battery power, and can last longer than that. So this is a great example of this Sky Pro GPS, of what technology has brought us, as a very, very capable backup electronics with an iPad and this GPS system that gives you really, really excellent navigation capabilities in case you lose your electricity on the boat, or in case you lose your mounted chart plotter.
If anybody has any more questions, we are still open on Q&A, chat, and if you'd like to raise your hand, I am able to turn on your microphone on my end. We've got another person asking in the chat.
I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment so I can grab that that link and put it in the chat box. Is that okay, Katie? Let's try that.
Yes, sorry, that took a while to unmute.
I'm hoping that everyone can't see my screen right now.
All we see is your beautiful face.
Oh, good, good. Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Well, you're awfully kind. So let me see here. I'm gonna get this up.
Alrighty.
Any other questions anyone might have? Okay, let's see. I've almost got this. This is my favorite place to go for forecast conditions. I do like SailFlow is my favorite for my app for real-time things, and I use SailFlow all over Europe when we were traveling in Europe too. But for localized marine weather forecast and situations, this click point link that I just sent you guys, I think is really quite spectacular. And that is coming. You see how it's got a latitude and longitude on it. That's my link goes right to the Rosario Strait. If you go into that location, you can open up the map and move it to the spot to wherever you like. And this link specifically will go to the Rosario Strait. Okay, thank you all very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. And just to reiterate from my chat message, if anybody from this seminar today that's still logged in and would like to sign up for any of our 3 seminars tomorrow, we still have some spots left. So go ahead and click on the Eventbrite link and register at any one of those 3 for tomorrow. I believe it's at 11 a.m., 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. again. And we've got Brian hosting 2 of those seminars tomorrow. We hope to see you or virtually see you all there.
Thanks very much. Have a good night, everybody.